Reproductions. This is a hotly debated topic within the retro gaming community, right up there with things like emulation. Where the legal and moral lines of reproductions fall will greatly depend on the individual you ask. Some will say that it's a black and white issue of legality, while others will argue that many older games have been abandoned and the community has every right to try and offer alternatives. Die-hard collectors often loathe reproductions based on the simple fact they aren't the originals, while others will be grateful to have a chance to own a playable version of a rare game that may cost a fortune. My own opinion is an amalgam of all of these views. I believe that a reproduction can be a very good thing. It allows access to games that have not been released commercially for decades, and can give us a retail-like product of something that was never released at all. This is especially true of English translated games, or games that have undergone modifications to enhance the experience. With that said, I also earnestly believe that should a classic game offer a modern variant, you need to support that over a reproduction. No matter how you slice it, a reproduction is piracy, and taking away money from an IP holder that gives you a modern alternative is point-blank theft. It's one thing to buy a reproduction of a game that hasn't seen a release for 20 plus years. It's something else entirely when you can go on PSN or Xbox Live and buy it legitimately with a touch of a button. Besides, the more you support the classics in their modern forms, the more you show other companies that there is a market for their old IPs. In this episode, we're going to look at some of the Sega Saturn reproductions I recently received so I can show you the broad range in price and quality that exists out there. First up here is the most basic form of reproduction, the backup. Backups are typically done as quickly and as cheaply as possible, and probably looks like something you may have created for your own collection. The advantage of this form of reproduction sits strongly in its value proposition. If you do not have the skills or means to make your own discs, it can be a very inexpensive way to obtain the games you want to play. Your trade-off is of course the quality and visual appeal of a better made product. If you are wanting to display a game in your collection, this is definitely not for you. Next up is the direct copy of the original retail release. This form of reproduction is perhaps the most dubious, as it seeks to basically be a carbon copy of the original. Some will attempt to use these releases to trick buyers and resellers into thinking they are the legit versions, causing some headaches for collectors, especially if the copy is of extremely high quality. Most of the time there are tells that you can learn to identify a fake in both cartridges and discs, so be sure to educate yourself when buying games that are on the expensive side. Some of the more reputable sellers will add a mark somewhere on the case art and discs to indicate it's a reproduction. The advantages to this kind of release is the very displayable quality you can get with the better made reproductions out there. That leads us to our next entry, the reproduction in the DVD or custom case. This will typically include a disc that copies the original retail release and be stored in a DVD or some other form of custom case, where the artwork will be adjusted accordingly. The quality of these types of releases are all over the place, with some using decent paper for the inserts and high quality recordable media, to some using the absolute lowest quality materials available. Single disc reproductions will run you $10 to $20 depending on the quality and completeness, while multi-disc games will scale up depending on how many discs are actually included. Panzer Saga here was made with poor materials and cost around $30. Both games shown here worked without a hitch, with even the cinema-heavy Saga running great. Our next entry is definitely my favorite type of reproduction, and the only kind I really have in my personal collection, and that's the completely custom reproduction. This type of repro often is an original pairing of case and disc art, with many repro sellers willing to work with you to give you exactly what you want. When the entire Shining Force 3 epic was translated to English, I wanted to own a collection of the English releases that was entirely different from the retail versions I already owned. I found a seller that did beautiful work on both the discs and inserts, both of which had a beautiful reflective ink similar to working design releases. You'll pay about $30 for a 3-disc set like this, but at this level of quality, it's well worth it in my opinion. I played through all 3 discs with a perfect experience, and highly recommend these games if you have never played them. I also wanted to take a moment and thank my buddy David Lee over at Sega Saturn Shiro for this custom of Christmas Nights. As many of you know, the US release never came in a retail box, instead being relegated to a simple paper sleeve. Dave found it in his heart to send this over to me as a gift, and boy is it some good quality stuff. This looks exactly like what I would have gotten had the game been released in big box form, with perfect printing and an instruction manual that tells the story of the children in the game. The level of detail and love that went into this was incredible, and I just wanted to give Dave a shout out for the gift. If you guys love the Saturn and want to consume some great content from these guys and gals, head on over to their Facebook page and check them out. I also wanted to take a moment and remind you that reproductions aren't just available for the Saturn, as I also own a number of reproductions for the PS1 that were never released, or never released in English. Resident Evil 1.5 here is some of the unreleased work from the original scrapped version of Resident Evil 2. Policenauts, much like its Saturn cousin, never saw an original English release. Finally, I wanted to spotlight an Etsy seller that has done some great work for me, and is an all-around great seller that works hard to try and give you what you're looking for. Mega Box Reproductions does excellent work, and can do discs for most retro gaming systems, like the PC Engine and Turbo CD, the Sega CD, Saturn and Dreamcast, and even the PS1. They also do boxes, inserts, and disc-only orders. He recently sent me an English translated version of Dragon Force 2 that looks like the original Japanese release. He also did a custom job for me with the US big box version of the English translated Policenauts. He did the front and back inserts himself, lending the game a great look that displays perfectly alongside my other retail games. Both these games represent the kind of quality you can get in a reproduction, and since neither of these games were released in this form at retail, it makes owning them a big addition to any serious Saturn owner. Seeing as how these were gifts to the channel, I will be passing them on to you as a giveaway. Both these games here are up for grabs, so be sure to let me know down in the comments which one you want and you'll be entered. As a final reminder, you need to own either a Saturn that has a mod chip or a pseudo Saturn cartridge to play these. They will not play on your Saturn by default. So there we go guys, reproductions and their varying quality and prices. No doubt there are a ton of people out there that will try to sell you garbage when it comes to reproductions, but there are also some that take the time and put in the effort to give you something that's actually worth your money. Most of the early CD-based systems like the Sega CD, PC Engine and Turbo CD, Neo Geo CD, 3DO, and the like don't need anything extra to play backups and reproductions on them. Both the Saturn and PlayStation need additional devices or methods to bypass their security, as do most of the systems released after them. Many Sega Dreamcast systems will play backups and reproductions with no problem, however. If you do some research and take the time to ask a few questions, I'm positive you'll find a seller out there that takes the time to put out a solid product that can help enhance your library that displays nicely alongside your official releases. Be sure to check the description for a link to Mega Box Reproductions if you like their work seen in this video. And if you would like to be entered for the giveaway of Policenauts and Dragon Force 2, be sure to say so down in the comments. I'm SEGALORDX, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.